Brianna Griffin, and I will be speaking on climate change in Cambodia. Cambodia is experiencing many climate-related changes. First, the temperature of Cambodia is increasing. The UNDP Climate Change Profile on Cambodia projects the temperature to increase by 0.7 to 2.7 degrees Celsius by the 2060s and 1.4 to 4.3 degrees Celsius by the 2090s. The annual average temperature of Cambodia has increased by 0.8 degrees Celsius since 1950. The rate of this temperature increase is highest during the dry months of December through February and is much lower during the wet season or the monsoon season. The 2018 IPCC report stated that the current temperature levels in Cambodia are reaching critical levels which may negatively impact rice production. Rice farming is a major part of Cambodia's economy, and so this temperature rise and its impact on rice farming is very detrimental to the economy of the country. Cambodia is also victim to sea level rise among its coastal communities, comparable to much of that is happening globally. Cambodia is also vulnerable to major droughting and flooding events, which have major impacts on its agricultural industry. These events are increasing in frequency and in intensity. Cambodia has a population of 16.01 million citizens, and the GDP of the country is $22.16 billion US. The economy of Cambodia had an average growth rate of 7.7% between 1995 and 2017, making it the sixth fastest growing economy in the world. So it is safe to say that the economy is thriving. The largest sector of Cambodia's economy is services, which contributes 43% of its GDP and is driven by tourism. This includes construction, finance and banking, retail and wholesale, and tourism and hospitality. Industry composes 37%, which is mostly composed of textile and garment manufacturing. Agriculture is 20% of Cambodia's GDP, and most of the rural citizens of Cambodia are a part of the agricultural sector. Rice is the principal agricultural product, as I mentioned earlier, and it is very vulnerable to the temperature increases that are being experienced in the country. Secondary crops include maize, cassava, sweet potatoes, and rubber, amongst others. Cambodia would have a difficult time reducing its carbon consumption, in my opinion. This is mostly because most of Cambodia's carbon consumption is used in industry and in economic facets. When comparing it to a country like America, where over 50% of our carbon consumption is used in energy and transportation. 47.8% of emissions are from land use change in forestry. This includes construction, which makes up a major part of the services sector of the Cambodian economy. 36.4% of Cambodian carbon emissions comes from agriculture and livestock, which contributes to 20% of the Cambodian economy. Because a vast majority of the carbon consumption of the country comes from the money makers of the economy, I don't really see the Cambodians having an easy time reducing its carbon consumption. The only way to reduce the carbon consumption in Cambodia would be to find ways to cushion the economy, which is very new and still growing at a very rapid pace. Also, a large portion of the Cambodian citizenry are not educated. There is a severe scarcity of schools and classrooms, particularly in rural Cambodia, which limits the amount of children that have access to education. And it's very important to understand carbon consumption and its impacts on our environment now and in the future in order to make a change. Cambodia has been much more involved here recently in domestic and international climate policies. The government of Cambodia ratified the UNFCCC in 1996 and has participated in talks on climate change. However, Cambodia still remains extremely vulnerable to climate change effects due to its large agricultural, aquacultural, and generally climate-sensitive economy. The country has enacted the Climate Change Strategic Plan 2014 to 2023, which is the country's first ever comprehensive national policy document on climate change mitigation. The plan outlines 3 goals: reducing Cambodian vulnerability to climate change, shifting towards a greener future, and promoting public awareness to climate change. Cambodia is also a part of the Mekong River Commission, being as though much of the river lies within the borders of Cambodia. Cambodia, along with Vietnam, Thailand, and Laos, which also contain portions of the river, have collaborated on the only intergovernmental organization that manages the shared water resources of the Mekong River. They are finding ways to enact sustainable practices along the river, especially as far as fisheries go, and just overall sustainability within their countries. Cambodia has enacted a rectangular strategy for growth, which emphasizes agricultural diversification and productivity, land reform and demining, fisheries reform, and forestry reform. In my opinion, climate change is never something that should be looked at on, just like a country-to-country basis, because it is a global problem that can only be solved by working together as a human race instead of tackling the problems individually. There are some problems that you can tackle from a micro level, but most problems such as climate change are global phenomenons. So instead of focusing on Cambodia singly, I would like to focus on the problems that Cambodia is seeing and also compare those to countries that are similar to Cambodia and have the same or similar climates to Cambodia, and to see how those countries are reacting and enacting plans to combat climate change. As far as what I would like to focus on, I would really like to focus on the Mekong River and the sustainability of the practices in that area. The river is the lifeline to many of the people who live in the rural Cambodian communities, and these communities are also the most vulnerable. They are the ones that don't have access to education. They are the ones that live completely off of the land. Some of these communities don't even have electricity and get overlooked sometimes. And so I would like to focus on the most marginalized parts of their citizens and really give focus to the problems that are happening in those communities.